Okay, we're going to go on ahead and reconvene this meeting. Up next on our agenda, reports from subcommittees. First one up on the list is community outreach.
Hi there. The Community Outreach Committee met at the end of the month, and we went over some of the materials that we've been working on for quite a long time. And Ms. Amanda, could you come and tell us where we're at with the timelines on that? This is collateral materials that will go out to the community. It's a brochure that has a complaint form in it, and it's in English and Spanish. And so we're hoping, it's a self-mailer, so it doesn't cost anything to mail it in. So we're hoping it's going to be a useful product for us in our work.
Hi, yes, Chair Galloway and fellow board members. I did email the vendor today just to follow up with them to see where we're at in getting the brochure material, and they did email me back, and they said that they'll be ready for us on Tuesday, and that's the brochures. And so we will get those packets together, and we have to put them, get them ready to be distributed to the 55 locations that we currently have our materials at. So with that being said, we will have them out and distributed by the end of next week.
Okay, and it's important that we have some that are here at this meeting. It would be nice to have a stash that stays with this meeting, so that Katrina.
Yes, and I'll make sure that Katrina has all the updated brochures as well.
That's great. So there's a rollout idea of this as well, and an opportunity with the annual report to go out and do some speaking gigs in the community about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and gathering feedback from people, creating a conversation in the community, and we've been talking about that, and using the annual report as a vehicle by which to juice that orange. So that's what we've been talking about. We have much to do as we move forward. Our next meeting is, I don't know. Do you know? The 28th of April? Okay. At what time? 1 p.m.
We also reappointed
Oh.
Member Fine as chair of the outreach subcommittee at that meeting, so that.
I was the last one to say no, so I was elected.
Yep.
Just kidding.
Okay, policy and procedure. Chelsea?
Okay, we had our regularly scheduled monthly meeting. We discussed the two policies that have come out of PPRB and that are due for comment. And so in your packet, you will see letters regarding 180 and 188. These are sort of pro forma responses. We decided that these were not policies that we needed to provide commentary upon. And that will happen frequently, I'm sure, but it was just important to me that we start responding because we hadn't been sending any sort of response when it had been requested, and we're built into the process, and so I thought even though it was pro forma, it was still just appropriate to have something on paper that shows that we looked at it, we're aware of what's coming through, and here's our response, even though it's not much of a response, you know. So if you take a look, these are 180 prisoner transport unit and 188 sex crimes unit. I basically just say that these don't pertain to the CASA. Sometimes we might pick up a non-CASA policy, but not in this case. We're not making any recommendations on these two. And so I was hoping to get these two approved.
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we approve both these letters. I appreciate getting the feedback. It's helpful.
I second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and so there's only been one PPRB meeting to attend, so these were from that meeting. There are OPA meetings every week. I missed one because I got really lost. I couldn't find it. They moved the location of the meeting, and that building is a maze. And I got lost again today too, but I found it. And so I have, I started putting all of the policies coming from OPA into a chart that I could just sort of read off, but then I started thinking that it was unnecessary to read off all the OPA policies because they're really early on in the process. We're not necessarily involved at that point. So it was my sort of executive decision to just not report out all the OPA policies. But if you guys would like me to, I would be happy to in the future. I just sort of determined it was sort of unnecessary for this report.
I'm good with you being the filter of what's important and what's not.
Okay.
So, it's going to come to us at some point, in any case.
Yeah, they'll get to the PPRB as the next stage, and then that's when I'll be bringing them to first the subcommittee. And
But
then-
if you think it's important for us to pay attention or more closer attention moving forward, I would appreciate that heads
I
up.
think maybe anything that's CASA related, just as
Yeah.
a general
Yeah.
rule of thumb, maybe we should
good
know
rule.
as early on as possible where that they're coming up, or be on the lookout. That might be helpful, but
I could do that. Okay, so that was pretty much everything. We did discuss making some recommendations that came through to us from the CPOA from cases from last year. I wanted to get us caught up on those, and we'll be discussing, we did decide on some recommendations, and we'll be discussing those at the next POB meeting. They were.
In June, in
Yeah.
May. No, are we
Yeah.
in May? We are in May, too.
Yeah, we had them ready for today, but we had a little bit of a glitch, so we'll
Okay.
just discuss them next time. And that was really everything. Our next meeting is going to be June 6th at 12:30 in the Plaza del Sol basement.
Okay.
okay. Thank you. Valerie's not here. Joanne, do you feel comfortable?
Valerie
Handling-
asked me,
Oh,
so
okay,
I can
good.
do it if,
Perfect.
okay.
Yep, case review.
Okay, cool. So the case review subcommittee met at its regular time. We elected Valerie St. John as our chair of the subcommittee. We reviewed the cases that you see on the agenda. We recommend to the board to make motions on the administratively closed cases to approve those. We have one case on the non-consent agenda for discussion, and that's everything, really.
And case review meets next.
Oh, right. Where did I put that?
I assume the
The same day
28th,
as outreach.
or the 28th?
Oh. Oh, yeah, May 28th at 11:30 in the Plaza del Sol basement.
Okay, next up is personnel. So, couple of things kind of going on. There was also a little hiccup, kind of. I'd hoped, and the committee recommended that we bring to the full board the progressive disciplinary action policy, as well as the tool that will be used to kind of implement that. That didn't make it, but I'm going to ask that we send that out. I don't know, Katrina, I know you've got a new baby on the way, or, so you're going to be busy, but if we can get that out maybe by the end of next week, is that doable to get those two pieces so the board can review them? The progressive disciplinary stuff? So if those go out by the end of next week, that's the 17th, if I can have feedback from board members, if there's anything that you would like to change or see taken out, whatever, any kind of feedback, if you guys can provide that to me by midnight on the 23rd, so that we have that available for our next personnel meeting, that would be helpful.
And if you could put the deadline for feedback and feedback to go to you, that would be great, if it said all that.
Okay, so there's that, just know that that's coming down the pike. Also, I reviewed the results of Director Harness's evaluation, and we had 50% participation from the board. So, I feel like we're kind of obligated to complete that evaluation. So for
Just say.
anybody who has not done so, please know that the link is live now. You can go back, you can complete that evaluation.
Only if you haven't done it before.
Only if you haven't done it before. My understanding is that for anybody who had completed it, you should have received a thank you. And for anybody who has not completed it with the deadline is this Sunday. So this
I'll
is
do it
not for a week. If it's not been done, it needs to be done in the immediate. And then there's several people here from the CPOA office, and we only had 2 respondents. And while I, certainly can't compel you all, if you would participate, we would appreciate it if you hadn't, because you have a very unique perspective. And then any of the stakeholders that have not participated yet. So again, you guys have access to the survey until Sunday at midnight, I think. I'm looking for Amanda. Midnight, right?
Yes, I completed the survey, but I didn't receive any notice that I had, and so,
Yeah, I don't think, I was just emailing you about that.
Yeah, I
need
didn't-
to
I
be
didn't either.
informed. Yeah.
Just so, I don't.
so I guess what I'd like to know is, was this received
The survey results
from, where?
from
mine-
you,
yes.
I did get yours
So,
and mine.
all right, so.
Okay,
all right.
yes. So the only ones that are anonymous, of course, are the staff. That's what the board directed the last time. So I know who has completed it. I just wasn't gonna say and call everybody else out. So we have that, again, the 13th, I think, is,
I'll finish mine tomorrow.
yeah. So if we can get that done. We also reappointed myself as chair of that committee. And our next personnel committee meeting is the 26th, nope, the 24th at 9:30 in the basement hearing room. Okay, moving on, item 9, this is the agenda item that we just changed up, so 27518, Member Van Deventer.
Well, this is an item for the whole board. I know that it was Director Harness's desire that it be placed on the agenda for discussion. And essentially, we're at, let's see. I mean, the background is that this is the overtime investigation. It's received some press. We sent our recommendations. It was several recommendations of policy and 2 recommendations of discipline, recommending essentially the dismissal or termination of the officer and his lieutenant. We received back from the chief a letter informing us that some action was going to be taken on some of the recommendations, and that the disciplinary recommendation was not going to be, that he wasn't going to follow the disciplinary recommendation. And so this is just here for us to discuss, I guess. If anyone wants to make any comments or anything.
Do you know if Director Harness, I know that you're very familiar with all of this. Excellent investigation, by the way. Do you know if there's anything in particular that he wanted discussed?
Chair Galloway and honorable board members, I'm not sure anything in specific that he wanted to discuss. I think he wanted to leave it up to you all to explore the ideas, what you think you might want to do, might not want to do, the options that are available to you under the ordinance. I don't know specifically, but I'm assuming that clearly, the board and the executive director recommended termination, and there's not going to be any discipline, although there was concurrence on at least 2 of the standard operating procedures of the 3. So you would still have a non-concurrence, but in cases of a non-concurrence, the chief is required just to send you a written response as to why he's not concurring, and I don't know if the letter that he sent out,
Do you have that letter?
yes, is sufficient for that or not. I don't know. I don't know how the whole process is.
He's obligated to tell us why he doesn't agree. And
He
do we?
did send us a letter.
He did.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's not the same thing. Oh, he can say, I don't agree. If he doesn't say why he doesn't agree.
He did.
He did?
Yes.
He
Okay.
did.
Yes.
All right.
I mean-
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, he did, and certainly, of course, it's up to the discretion of the chief of police whether or not disciplinary recommendations are implemented or not. But I don't know if there is any recourse available to us. I don't recall that. I
There
feel like
isn't.
we just recently had this conversation and there's nothing that can be done. So,
Well, and Mr. Perard said, the truth is that there are limited powers of this board, and that's correct. We make recommendations. I think that we certainly have served the community relative to making them aware of this problem. The editorial that was in the paper today was a good one in terms of the process and our process. So I think there's something to that. I think that they have made the promise of reform and the things that we can do moving forward to make sure they make those reforms. And I think they're going to change clearly they agree with, they concurred with some of the findings. There wasn't anything to dispute. It was double dipping for sure. So they're going to change the policies. Our job is now to make sure they do that and to pay attention to that through policy and through the board meetings.
And hopefully, I would hope that our desire would not be one of gotcha and keeping
Oh,
our
goodness,
thumb on it.
no.
Like, we're looking to do policy reform and revision when and where necessary to make APD, participate in that process of improving APD and the relationship of APD with the community. I think at the end of the day, that's the goal.
Yeah.
It's not stick.
It's not gotcha.
Yeah.
It's never going to be gotcha. It's about giving the police department feedback from the community about how we feel about certain things. We talked a little bit before about child abuse and where they ought to be going with that. Keep us posted. We all want to know. This is no different from that. We think this is an unacceptable policy that allows this kind of thing to happen. We think it was violation of existing policy, and existing policy is probably too loose. And I think he concurred on part of that. He said he's going to take some action and change policy. Let's find out if he does.
There was a little bit of discussion, I don't know if you were going to kind of talk about that at our policy and procedure meeting, with regards to whether or not that letter served as our recommendation to APD. Take a look at these policies and kind of start that process and introducing it to open, start that, ball rolling, or if we needed to do it in another more formal way. I don't know if the board has an opinion about that.
Well, I think we did discuss that, and based on the response we received, we determined that the recommendations had been successfully made through the CPOA letter because we got substantive responses as to the policy issues that were raised. I think I would agree that we don't have options left. Like, the board's hands are really tied by the chief's response. All that we can do is just, provide our feedback on how we feel about, his declination to terminate or follow our disciplinary recommendations. And I think that all there really is to say about that, well, first, a couple of clarifying things. I know for today in the op-ed, one of the reasons that the Albuquerque Journal Board gave in support of the chief's decision was that this was a decision made just by an investigator, some investigator. But that's not the case. The investigators are fact finders and don't have the authority to recommend discipline. And so this recommendation, it was not political, and it didn't come from somebody who lacked the authority. It came from Director Harness. Director Harness was using the chart of sanctions. He wasn't making it up. It wasn't based on personal feelings about what he thought about the conduct. It was what the chart of sanctions guided us to recommend. And I think because there were numerous policy violations, that's just where it got. There were just that many. There was a statement also coming from the chief's letter to, justify the decision that said that we relied on an expired policy. And I would just like to clarify that SOPs don't expire. There's an SOP on that, SOP 3-51-4C3. So we weren't relying on any old or bad policies in doing this investigation and analysis. I think that I certainly understand that it would be a difficult decision for Chief Geyer to terminate this officer or his lieutenant. I mean, yeah, that's tough. I'm concerned that it's a little bit of a missed opportunity in that it would be a great opportunity to let the public know that accountability exists.
Well, I think that's what I hear him saying, and we're going to change the policy. But if I were the chair of the policy committee or on the policy committee, 3 months from now, I'd be looking to see if any of those policies changed. If it's in
Yeah.
OPA, is it in PPRB?
Well,
Where is it?
So I've sought some clarification today, because there was a lot of questions about like what an audit might be, who could do an audit, who has the authority to audit, do we? And I am aware that the state auditor is gonna look at the chief's overtime program. It's a recommendation essentially coming from the CPOA that maybe the city auditor address matters that the state auditor does not address. That way we can have a really comprehensive view of what's happening, see if we need to make recommendations outside of those that have already been made. And then, yes, as far as determining or monitoring whether these changes are being made, I think that is our onus, and I'm wondering exactly how we do it. Because I know, for example, one of the things that Mr. Scotchable found in his investigation was that in 2016, they were supposed to change this policy and they just completely dropped the ball on it. And I feel like everything we saw in that letter from the chief, that could happen to all of those things. And probably it, you know, if anyone should be monitoring it, it should be us, it should be oversight. I'm wondering logistically how that takes place. Just a lot of follow-up emails, or what do you guys
Well,
think?
to my way of thinking, if in 3 months we haven't seen any action on that, then I think we draft a policy that says, you know, we're gonna weigh in on this. You know, we think this policy needs to be changed. You know, one thing, the honor system, which probably isn't an SOP, which they said they were gonna get rid of and was part of the articles that I read. You know, clearly they need to get rid of that. But in terms of whatever policies do govern this, if I didn't see anything change in 3 months, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. You know, I think he agreed with us, you know, as far as the action, it was wrong. Now let's see if he does anything about it. You know, and if he doesn't, give him 3 months, and then we submit something ourselves. You know, that says, we think the policy, we're still waiting.
Should we maybe should we maybe write a letter asking the chief to come present what has been done in 3 months? And then that kind of
How
lets
about
them
if we
know that we're,
Let him know that we're interested in seeing what changes. I would write him a letter to that effect, to say we are interested, actively interested. Our Policies and Procedures Committee would like to know when you decide to make changes in the policy to correct these things, and we'd like to be on the list of people that you notify, you know, and then in 3 months follow up, you know, and say, we haven't heard from you, what's up? You know, I think that's clear. It's good enough for me.
So I'm kind of, you know, still in favor of having that as a standing agenda item on our PMP meetings, just so that we don't lose focus of
Right.
that, just like it's always there. And then, yeah, following up, I don't know if, Tina, you have any suggestions for how to, you know, gently.
I don't think there's anything ungentle about that.
Chair
It's just-
Galloway,
it's just the
Honorable
facts,
Board.
man.
The board, through the director, can send any type of communications to whomever it would like, as long as the board is in accord with what that content includes. If the board would like to send something now, that's something that you all can discuss. You can direct Director Harness's sit-in today to do that, to have it prepared for the next meeting. If you know what you would like the general content to include, you could do that as well. If you would prefer to wait until your next board meeting for some time to pass, it's really up to the board, and you can use your executive director for that.
Any communication that is sent to the chief, does that need to be approved by the full board, or can the board designate the subcommittee to do that and then report back, like on a quarterly
Would be the
basis?
chair, not the subcommittee, would be the chair,
Well, I mean,
on behalf of the chair.
yeah, but my suggestion is to have the subcommittee just draft those things,
No, I
rather
wouldn't
than
be okay
having
with
the full board have to wait every month to do that.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of proposing that we just approve right now, we just make a motion right now, that I or Mr. Scotchable sends a letter that says we would like some sort of update in 3 months' time We're hoping that gives you time to
Within
make
3 months.
like significant progress on the things that have been discussed, and that would be,
Okay.
that
And I
would
think
be-
it's an opportunity to say, we appreciate the fact that you concurred on this and concurred on that, and since you've said you're going to take these other actions, we'd like to be kept in the loop on that. We'd appreciate it if any actions within the next 3 months, let us know.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Chair Galloway, just to clarify, for your subcommittee meetings, you really cannot take action during those meetings of any sort. But if you take a vote tonight to delegate that authority
I
to
move
either
that
the
we do.
chair or the chair of that subcommittee, you may do that. But you cannot take action at your subcommittee meetings without risking a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, then are we okay with a motion?
I'm
I
good.
move that Chelsea and Mr. Scotchapole work on a draft. I don't decide between you whether it's signed by our chair or not, but that compliments the chief for the things that he concurred with us on and asked to be included in the loop on the actions he takes from this point forward.
I'll second. Leonard, you had your hand up to
He's
say
got a
something.
look on his
and-
face like, oh.
No, I'm good, thank you. I'm okay.
So does that encompass what you would like to have done? Joanne's motion?
Yeah, I mean, it was just an idea of how to make sure we're like staying on the ball, kind of. So
I'm
Well,
a
I,
big
for one,
fan of
do
communicating.
appreciate, yeah, I do appreciate making a request, you know.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. All right, item 10 on the consent agenda cases administratively closed.
Did she ask you to do this part too?
oh. So, I don't know, is that how it normally works? Okay,
Okay.
so,
I can do it if you want.
the case review subcommittee reviewed these cases and made the recommendation that the board place them on the consent agenda. And they are two sections: A, the administratively closed cases, and B, a case that was exonerated. I'll read them aloud for the record.
I don't think you need to. They're on the agenda.
Okay, all right, great. So I would make a motion that the board approve the findings in these cases under item 10.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 11, non-consent agenda.
I think myself and Ms. St. John asked that this case be placed on the non-consent agenda. Essentially, it's a case where a gentleman complained that his daughter had stolen some weapons from him and then pawned them off. And he wanted to know what was going on, why she hadn't been charged. The CPOA's investigation, I thought it came to the CPOA administratively closed the case. Let me actually pull it up. Let's see.
Mr. Scotchapole, do you have this case as well?
Chair Galloway, or honorable board members, I do have the letter in front of me. It's 071-19. And I do have some background on it. I was not the investigator, but I looked into it at length to be prepared to answer any questions that you all may have this evening.
Okay, so the decision was to administratively closed because they determined that the property had been sold legitimately through the pawn shop. They said that the case is a mixture of civil property dispute issues and possible criminal charges. I felt that it wasn't, an administrative close was not proper because it seemed to me that the investigation just was incomplete, and that what it did was it raised, it answered questions about Detective S. Those were thoroughly answered, I felt, but it didn't answer all of the questions that were raised by the case. And the questions I felt that were raised by the case was, well, how was the issue of the daughter having stolen the firearms handled? Are charges forthcoming? Was it handled? Did it disappear into the ether? That's what I thought wasn't answered. And so I felt that the case shouldn't be administratively closed.
Because it's not done? Is that?
Yeah, I
because-
felt it was incomplete.
I was the dissenter on this one, and there was also a huge lapse of time between when the father reported his gun stolen and with the wrong serial numbers, and that got corrected. In the interim, the daughter had been living with him, was no longer living with him, was nowhere to be found. I thought that the father's complaint was really about what's happening with this investigation now that we know she pawned this. I don't think APD has closed this case, and therefore there's not a way to answer what's happened with this because it's still ongoing. And so I did think that we went as far as we could go as far as the agency is concerned. So because I didn't agree that it was that it should be on the consent agenda, or that I didn't agree that it should be on the non-consent agenda, I would have voted to support it the way it was.
What can you add for us? Can you just kind of, we used to go through the complaint and the findings letter and all of that, and I kind of miss those days.
Honorable board members, this gentleman submitted his online complaint, and if you were to read the complaint, the concerns are, he doesn't mention that it was his daughter who had stolen the weapons. He says that he had reported some weapons stolen. He had determined that they had been sold through a local pawn shop, and he hasn't heard anything, and he wants to know why the offenders have not been prosecuted. That's the extent of what the complaint was. The investigator started looking into the case, found out that what happened was that in 2017, the complainant's guns were stolen from his home. It was about a month between the time of the actual theft or loss of firearms and the time that he reported it. At the time that he reported the firearms stolen, he didn't have any of the serial numbers available. 3 days later, he went into a substation and provided serial numbers, and unfortunately, they were the incorrect serial numbers for the guns. So what happens is when a person pawns a gun at a pawn shop, a ticket is filled out and it is immediately run through NCIC. If the gun is stolen, it pops up as a stolen gun, APD is contacted and they go into it and deal with it. Unfortunately, he waited until November of 2018 to find the correct serial numbers. Now the problem was that those guns had been pawned by then, and they sat in there the required 90 days to 120 days before they can be sold, and then they were sold. So they were sold to what we presume to be legitimate purchasers who believed that they were not buying stolen property. The investigation, I checked on this, and the investigation has been assigned or is going to be assigned to an investigator. APD has concerns over the fact that the guns were sold in the manner that they were. They still have to establish, as part of the criminal defense, is establishing intent, and so was there a relationship between the two? Did she have access to the guns? Nobody can really find her at this point to find out, did she have access and control? Was it something, hey, you can use my guns anytime you want to, but then when he finds out they're pawned, what was her intent in depriving her father of those guns? Was it, hey, I took your guns, I was hoping to get some money for a little while, and then I never got the money to get them out, and I'm sorry that went, which would be civil at that point. But there's a lot more investigation that needs to be done criminally. I think that the administrative closure is okay at this point, and the reason why I say that is because if we keep it open for the 90 to 120 days from the time, I'm not sure that we would even have a completed investigation to review on behalf of the complainant to go back and say, yes, APD did their job, or no, APD did not do their job. Because at this point, it's at an impact detective's sergeant's desk, and they have thousands of cases to give to a limited number of investigators. This is going to be a sign. They just haven't done it yet. So I think that to keep it open and not give this gentleman any closure, I mean, I'm with you. I think he needs something saying, hey, it's still active. Give it a while to work itself out, come back. We can always reopen a complaint if we get new information, something like that. But I don't want to be premature in judging APD before all the final is completed.
I'm sorry, just one. How many cases come before the CPOA office that have not been completed within APD?
Chair Galloway, board members, I couldn't give you an exact number. It's frequent. One of our complaints is I filed a report and nothing has happened. I did this, I haven't heard anything back. And usually, as part of our investigation, we pull the police report, we look at what's going on with the case, and we hope to update the individual with some sort of a letter at a minimum to say, hey, the case is still ongoing, you can contact so-and-so, something to that effect. But at this time, we're administratively closing.
So we do have that language drafted in a response letter too?
I believe we do somewhere, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So if the investigation revealed that, that there is a criminal investigation occurring at APD, then that investigation itself is ongoing, and we've been able to verify that, then I think that does complete this investigation. But this investigation, but the findings letter we have here is just all about like whether or not Detective S did anything incorrect, and then it goes into this line of reasoning that's not very relevant about this being a civil dispute, which it's really not because it's about a felony larceny. So, I mean, I would say that, yeah, if we incorporated the information that APD has this case on a criminal investigation ongoing on their desk, then we tell him that and we can close this case out. But this letter doesn't really say that. It just says like, well, Detective S did this for you as a courtesy and that's it. He doesn't have any information that APD is actively investigating the larceny. And I think that in my mind, that was what was missing. That was what was incomplete about it. That was the stone unturned. So I could support just maybe making a modification.
To the letter? Mm-hmm. Member Waits?
Oh, I agree with her wholeheartedly, yeah. And adding to the letter that, that case can be reopened, that's fine too, so I agree with that.
That's pretty.
It's still lacking information on the letter.
That's pretty standard though, right? Like administratively closed cases, these are your options. It can be
Right.
reopened at a later time if new evidence.
Right.
It's in every letter.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that as long as we include the language that the case is ongoing with APD, I don't see any
Yeah.
reason why we can't.
And maybe we could give him that number in the letter so that he knows to follow up with them instead of, coming back to us.
Absolutely. Chair Galloway, honorable board members, we can make those changes before the letter goes out. Should you motion to do that?
Yeah, I make a
And-
motion that we make those changes.
I second.
Okay.
Dr. Cass, do you have anything to add to this? Okay. Very good.
And
Um,
do you guys want me to make really clear what the changes are for, are
Sure.
we good? Okay, I just don't want it to be a thing where it's like, well, you guys didn't say what the changes were.
Yeah, I
Do you
think it's
think you
good
have
for
the
just.
meat of it, dear? Do you think you have the meat of what we're talking about? Enough to change the
Chair
letter?
Galloway, board member Fine, I believe so. I'm sure it could be tweaked with a couple of extra lines. Sergeant so-and-so from the impact unit, whatever, has your case. You can contact him. It is an ongoing case. It hasn't been closed. No decision has been made to prosecute at this time, and someone will be in contact with you, is what we've been told by the Albuquerque Police Department.
Okay.
Sounds
Dr.
good?
Cass?
I just have a question, and that is, how often does something like this occur where there's been a general complaint that EPD isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing and as fast as the citizen expects? I mean, it seems to me to be a very non-specific sort of complaint. You can't point at any particular interaction between a citizen and an officer that resulted in something, that the citizen has is complaining about. It's sort of his complaint seems to be that APD isn't functioning like he expects it to function. And is that a frequent occurrence that you see?
Chair Galloway and Board Member Cass, yes, it is a frequent complaint, and it's unfortunate. I don't know, it's hard for us often to respond because APD uses a solvability matrix before they even assign a case, and you have to have, for example, you have to have a known offender. You have to have solvability factors that you look at before you assign it. If you don't meet a certain point criteria on that solvability factor, it doesn't get investigated. And we do often get complaints. For example, my house was burglarized and nothing's going on the investigation. And it's unfortunate because we look at it and we get a hold of the impact unit that was supposed to do something with it. And they go, yeah, we're closing it. We don't have any leads to go on. They are supposed to contact the victim of a crime and let them know the status of their case, whether it's closed, open, or whatnot. In this case, and I hate to say this because November of 18 was a little while ago, but 6 months to get assigned, it's pretty fast, actually. And it's unfortunate. They just don't have the manpower to do it.
Going back to our purpose, which is to
Yes.
make the best of the relationship between the community and the police department. We all need each other, okay, to make this work. And if a person doesn't believe the department is being responsive enough, that's a legitimate complaint. And if we can, on their behalf, find more information out for them and give them that information, then we are serving our purpose. So to my way of thinking, we might think it's a waste of time, but if you're the person whose house has been ripped off and you're waiting to hear something, that information could be helpful to you. So I'm in favor of doing nothing but exactly what we've done, which is give them the information that they can't find themselves. And that is serving our purpose.
Any other discussion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. All right. Item 12 on our agenda is a request for appeal. Mr. DeLangelo, I think we have you up to speak first. And yeah, and as you're making your way down here, I want to make sure that we're just very clear about what's happening tonight. I won't say that everybody, but I certainly have been reading your communication to the board, and I know that you have an intention or are hoping to present a 15-minute long recording, and I don't believe this is the forum to do that. So we're not going to do that tonight. Tonight we're going to decide whether or not we are going to grant you an appeal to your cases, and so I would like you to just kind of focus in on that, okay?
Madam Chairman, or Ms. Galloway, I wish you would have told me that in response to my numerous emails. I was told that you were, at least by Ed Harness, that you were given the evidence.com recordings that I reviewed over 7 months ago. Mm-hmm. This case, and I assume you haven't looked at any of those.
No, we've looked at them throughout the process.
Including the very, very disturbing telephone call between the young detective and Counselor Sanchez's wife. And the other thing that's really relevant here is that for some reason, well, let me put this up, which I think is significant. Who can turn this on, please?
I don't know what you're doing, honey.
No, I was starting his
Is it up?
So while we're waiting for that to come up, Mr. DeLangelo, can I explain something?
Yes, certainly.
So we have looked, the case review committee did look at the case, and the CPOA did investigate this complaint that you filed. And we found that though there was reason to believe that the councilman's ex-wife did say something, we didn't find that the police department responded to it. So in the case, just so you can see the process and where we are right now, we did look at the case and we agreed with the committee agreed, the board agreed with the agency's findings. And those findings were that though it was inappropriate for this woman, a councilman's ex-wife, to make a statement saying that, you know, the councilman wanted to visit with the officer in fact didn't do that. His supervisor said, don't do that. And in fact, it didn't happen. So we did go through that case and we did take a look at that. So now you appeal that, and the process here is for you to say to us, no, there's a criteria for appeals, and the appeals are that the committee didn't look at the right stuff, they didn't look at the right policies, there's 4 criteria, and I bet you Tina could tell you what they are, chapter and verse, but there's 4 ways in which your appeal could be granted.
And we just want to make sure.
Tonight is for that.
And we just want to make sure that we utilize the time that's going to be allotted to you, and maximize the impact that you can have with that. So if we can just read into the record what those 4 criteria are, just so everybody is clear.
Okay, I have them in front of me. Would you like me to read them?
Tina's got them.
Okay.
You know, I wasted my time coming down here, to be quite frank. Here is 1 page of the report, of the investigative report. If you got this from Ed Harness, you'd be humiliated. Yeah. Last year, and I don't want to be offensive towards you, but last year, as I said, there are a lot of great cops here. A lot of great cops hate their leadership, and that's not an understatement. A lot of things that you read on a blog, like the Albuquerque report, which in case of Simon Drobek, was not initiated here. It came out as a result of a series of October postings. Originally, of course, and I don't want to digress from mine, but that was originally initiated through the IG, who started it. And when the new IG came in and finally reported, it was pretty clear that he had jurisdiction. If the IG office was created to investigate crimes, that doesn't mean APD officers are excluded from that group of people. The IG was formed in 2003 specifically for that.
And we agree with you.
And the IG was given that job, he should have completed it. He was taken off that case and it was transferred to the CPOA, which Chief Gear has the authority to nullify anything you recommend. So essentially what he did was, and Gear, not only in Simon Drobek's case, but in this case with regard to Ken Sanchez's stepson, which is overwhelmingly, the kid should have gone to charge and possibly jail. Chief Gear was an accomplice in both cases. And what the current process says, Chief Gear, not Mayor Keller, who should be the one, because the buck stops at his desk. Here's a man that's complicit in both the Drobek situation and the cover-up of Ken Sanchez's son. I get this from Ed Harness.
Is that the investigation that was done by
That's 1
IA?
page of the investigation report.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out which investigation that is. Is that an investigation by us, by the CPOA?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
But it's blanked out. The other thing that, you know, it's not clear, the information that I received in 2018, there were no redacted names of officers at all. They were clearly named, including the lieutenant in Drobik's case, including all of the officers involved in the Sanchez case. What you have set up for you by Ed Harness is he has blacked out things. He's
I
done
have
things-
never seen that in the 4.5 years that I've been doing this. I have never seen a blacked out letter.
I sent you a copy of this.
Okay,
I sent you all.
Mr.
a copy.
Scotchapole, can you help us understand what he's talking about? Because I've never seen a redaction in a letter. All of our letters are public record, so I don't understand what he's showing us.
So we're going to let Mr. Scotchapole.
Let him speak for just a minute, Silvio, please.
Yes.
Okay.
certainly.
Thank you.
Chair Galloway, board members, Mr. DeLangelo, your request was fulfilled through pursuant to an IPR request. The officers' statements or summaries of statements are considered confidential through Garrity as Garrity materials. So because of
So is this an investigative file?
this is an investigative
Okay,
file.
that's the problem. Okay.
And the investigator summarized the complaint, and then the investigator summarized his interviews with each of the individuals involved in the case, and then made the findings and conclusions that the investigator did. So there was a findings and conclusions letter, the letter that goes out to the citizen. But as far as the request for the investigative file, that is the investigative file. And Mr. Harness doesn't send out, fulfill IPR requests. That's done through the city. The city is the one who
Who does
redacts the materials.
Okay, so, Mr. Scotchapole, can you explain, or Tina, if you're in a better place to do that? There is a Supreme Court ruling that,
I read Supreme Court ruling. It's
let me
Garrity
finish my
versus
sentence,
Houston.
okay?
Yes.
Because I really want to hear what you have to say, but I have to tell you what I know first, because it makes sense to me why you don't get that. We couldn't get that. We couldn't read what that's blacked out in there. We haven't seen that. And that is because of a Supreme Court ruling. Because a police officer is compelled to tell the truth, and even if it incriminates themselves, it can't be used against them. And so that's what you have. In an investigative file, the Garrity materials, that's what it's called, the interview by the officer, that is not accessible to us as a board, to you as a community, to anyone, okay? And that's why that page is blacked out, because Mr. Harness can't by law give you that information.
Let me explain to you. I've
Okay.
read Garrity versus
Okay.
New Jersey, Supreme Court ruling. I also sent you a copy of the DOJ interpretation, a letter interpretation that was sent to the Seattle city mayor because of their investigation of their police department. And it's very limited. What I obtained in 2018 had none of those. It had the arrest warrant, it had everything. It had, and then you have, because Ed Harness maintains that this was an investigation report, all of the incriminating information that Chief says is used to say, I exonerate, I exonerate everybody in it. It's just like the Drobik situation. What I'm telling you is, you are here to represent us. You are not here just to have a warm relationship with APD. You're not. You're to represent us, just like the old POC did. And you know that the Journal is also on the side of the mayor and the things. They did an editorial and tried to portray Drobik as a victim. This latest thing, which eulogized Chief Gear as the best thing next to sliced bread, was the most disgraceful piece of journalism I've ever read. Again, Mr. Harness is misinterpreting Garrity. He is misinterpreting Garrity, and you, and
And I
need to
hear you.
vote.
I hear that that's what you believe. I
No,
don't
I-
agree with you, but I hear you.
So.
What I'm saying to you is Chief Gear they sent me an investigative report that essentially is blank, okay? It has lies in it by Counselor Sanchez that in here and in the reports I obtained, which are not redacted, exposes the lies. Listen to this 15-minute thing, and you'll know that.
But that's not the
point.
purpose of tonight. We've already ruled in the complaint.
And there are just, you've served your country, you understand procedure. I know that I'm talking to somebody who understands. There are just certain procedures that have to be followed in order for anything to hold water. And right now, we're at that point where we are available to you and encouraging you to file an appeal based on the criteria that is available to you to do so.
There's nothing here. Do you understand? There's nothing here.
I understand, but that's where we are. We didn't create these rules, we just have to abide by them.
Do you, and I'm trying not to be disrespectful to you, do you understand that under these quote rules, yes, and I served in the military, and we had the Uniform Code of Military Justice things. I have gotten into this because I've seen too many people killed. APD officers, 100 APD officers have shot and killed people. Not one of them is in prison. Not one. And you sit here and it's like a kumbaya. It really is. And like you're afraid to offend Gear. Gear is part of the problem. Ed Harness is part of the problem. You're not part of the problem. You're representing us.
And we are trying to do that, sir, within the law. And I appreciate that your passion, I always have, as you know. I appreciate your service. I appreciate your commitment to this process. You and several others who have worked really hard to bring things to our attention.
Agreed. At this,
I want you to know that we investigated this case and that we found we were in agreement with what the CPOA found, that there was no proof that that Councilman Sanchez did anything wrong. And there is proof that somebody else, my question is, and we talked about this, but my question is should there be a policy that says when someone is asked for a favor, that's a police officer, should there not be some way in which that's documented? Because we have a lieutenant that says doesn't have to go in the folder, and the officer, the detective is saying, it should be in there. And so we have, the rules allow for some discrepancy. What we're here to do tonight is to hear your reasons why we should review
Point of
your
order,
case
please.
again.
I'd like to make a point of
I'm
order.
sorry, we're going to let Joanne finish.
I
We're going
I
to
would
let
like you,
Joanne finish.
would you?
Dr. Cass.
I would.
We will let Joanne finish.
I
Dr.
am
Cass.
finished. I am finished.
All right. I am going to ask you, Mr. Delangelo, if you have grounds for an appeal of your case based on the 4 criteria available to you.
I have documented in voluminous numbers of emails everything.
There are
The-
there are 4 categories available to you. Do you have an appeal? Would you like to make a request of this board to appeal your case based on any of those 4 criteria before you?
Of course, but let me understand. Chief Gear, who was an accomplice in this thing,
I
is
understand.
making the decision.
I understand, but we cannot do anything
Then
here
you're powerless.
out of procedure. I would encourage you to file your appeal.
It's a waste of time.
Otherwise, I
Then
think
don't.
that
It's a-
we're done. I
it's a
mean,
waste of time.
you've got
Oh,
3 minutes to
certainly I
file
will.
your appeal.
Certainly I will.
Well, he already has filed his request for an appeal. That's what we're dealing with today.
But do
Based
you
on that
understand
four
that you work
criteria.
for us?
And
Do
we
you
found it.
understand that you work for us and not Chief
If he
Gear?
wants to speak on it and see if he could convince us.
Okay. Do you have anything new to bring to the table?
I have a recording. I have a recording We had a police lieutenant that consumed 30
I'm
minutes.
sorry, we're not going to be doing that out there either. We're not going to do it up here, we're not going to do it out there.
You should have heard this. This was supposed to be given to you, and nobody took the time to
So
listen
you
to
have
it.
evidence that we haven't seen, is that what you're saying?
We're not doing that out there.
CPOA director said he gave you the 3 evidence.com recordings, one of which is here, which is a conversation between the young detective and Ken Sanchez's wife. The other 2 are audio-visual recordings, one of the encounter with the person that his stepson hit, which made a complaint that he pointed a gun at him. The third one was of the stop of his stepson, where while his wife claimed a search of the van was done to look for the gun, there was no search. They cut off the tape showing no search. Ed Harness said he provided those to you for your
And we
review.
have seen all the evidence, sir. We have. We
Have you
have
re-
seen the
have you
evidence.com.
reviewed
Yes, we
that?
have.
Have
And it
you-
was part of our review and part of the staff's review. We disagree with you, okay? That's all. We're not trying to berate you or demean you or do anything disrespectful to you. I'm telling you, we've already looked at all this information and we came to a conclusion, and the conclusion is not the same as your conclusion.
You listened to this.
Yes,
You did?
yeah.
And you saw the video?
We saw evidence, we have access to evidence.com. Yes.
And you saw this?
I didn't look at the investigative file, no. But I'm not surprised that the Garrity materials are blacked out. We're not allowed to
Well,
share
the
them.
Garrity
It's
material-
against the law.
The Garrity material wasn't blocked out in the 2018 information given to me.
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
It's supposed to be blacked out. If you got it not blacked out, that was an anomaly.
That wasn't.
I'm not hearing anything
No.
to grant an appeal on. So at this point, I guess I would make a motion that we deny the appeal.
Second.
All in favor?
I am
Aye.
making an appeal on those 3 provisions. I'm telling you,
Oh,
I am.
case number, what is it?
27518.
27518?
No, sorry.
What is that?
24418.
24418, case number 24418. The appeal has been denied by the board. Thank you. Tony Perard?
I just,
Joanne.
Oh, God. I think I got an idea. God, bless it.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight. I would really encourage that you do not close this case. I'm going to merely ask you just to look at the documents that were here. For instance, Detective Paul Smouse, number 88, hit and run detail report, supplemental report. You don't find that a little fishy? You don't find that this lady lied for that officer? This cop should be in jail. This person should be in jail. Why is he not in jail? Perhaps you can answer that question for us.
Can you clarify for us, are you referring to 24418 as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes, I am. And every other complaint associated with this.
so the same one that Mr. Delangelo was just talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would encourage that you do not vote to shut this down.
We already did, sir. We
Well,
already.
I didn't hear the vote.
I think that we have Mr. Delangelo's.
I didn't hear the vote.
Request for an appeal, but I think that we can do the same, take the same steps and offer Mr.
We
Perard
already
the same.
passed the case. We already did it. So he's appealing the fact that we passed the case. The
Well,
board voted on
then
it not
if-
at this meeting, before.
If it takes, I think I'll file a complaint of my own. Because I've been hearing about this since June of last year. And it's really fishy that a police officer can pull these crimes off and walk away and not have any disciplinary action. Just
Well, the complaint
like
that we-
Sandy and Perez.
The complaint that we received
Yes.
was about the undue influence, attempted undue influence by Counselor Sanchez's ex-wife in a case that involved her son. That's the complaint, not the actions that were within that episode that she was talking about, the complaint we received was about undue influence. And it is only undue influence that we ruled on. If there's
Okay.
criminal behavior by a police officer, that does not get investigated by us. If there's,
That's the
as soon as it's a criminal accusation that something criminal happened, it gets investigated by internal affairs. And it comes back to us, maybe, not always, depends on if it's an officer-involved shooting, serious use of force, those come back to us. This kind of case may not have come back to us. But the findings we have on this case have to do with whether or not there's proof that there was undue influence by someone saying they were speaking on behalf of a councilman. We don't have any evidence to that effect. The staff did an excellent job of proving that, and we agreed with the staff. We don't have proof of that. If you have proof of that, perhaps you should file another case.
I probably will, because we'll dig a little more into it. I'm sorry, I went off track here. Can I finish my speech?
Sure.
All right. I've been watching on the controlled and edited GovTV channel. I've been hearing about several violations of police SOPs and various other illegal shootings by police. I'm sorry to hear that this oversight board and the plans to give it subpoena power it needs, well, that backfired, like I said before. It's sad to hear that the truth can never come to light. For instance, the Jennifer Garcia incident, of course, changing police records, and there's another one that should be in jail. Changing information on a police report and tampering with evidence. All are federal offenses, but still no arrests or accountability. Another example of blatant lie and cover-up of Christian Arias Sanchez. I've seen several reports on the hit-and-run incident and gun pulled on a victim, and the police do nothing except cover up. Now, shouldn't that person be in jail when they pull a gun on a person in a car accident? That person should be in jail.
What I think that you assume, Mr. Perard, is
Yes.
that we have the power to investigate criminally the police department, and that is not the case. We do administrative investigations and a review of serious use of force and officer-involved shootings. So unless it involves serious use of force or officer-involved shooting, we're not getting it, okay? So,
Okay, yeah, I'm beginning to understand more and more about what you're...
It's important for me that you guys feel, you guys are very engaged in this process. It's important for me that you feel that you are being heard, but the flip side of that is I am encouraging you to hear us say that there are certain processes that need to be followed. Work with us in those processes and we can work with you, but when you deviate from that, there's nothing that we can do, our hands are tied. Come back to us with information.
our
Come
scope,
back-
a scope of work is not limitless.
Yeah, we can't just take on anything. So come back to us, continue to engage the process, but use the process that's available to you, okay? Thanks for participating, it is important to do so. That's
Okay.
the check,
Can-
the civilian
may I finish?
accountability. I think do you have an appeal? That's what we're on.
Yeah, no,
Well, I'd
We've
just like to
already
finish
done,
my
we've
statement.
already done public comment.
Yeah.
And so we're delving into things that aren't tying back to this case.
Well,
Do
this
you
does
have
tie
an
into the
appeal?
case.
Are you making a request to appeal?
I'm asking you if I can finish, and then I'll be done
Does
with
it have
that.
to do with that?
Yes, it does.
Okay, if you deviate, I'm gonna cut you off.
Give him 2 minutes. That
You've got 2 minutes to go.
About this? Okay.
Okay.
Then again, I'll ask you the question, when a person pulls a gun on a victim of an accident, should that person not be in jail? No, nothing was ever done, no complaint was ever filed. The settlement agreement has gone unanswered in regards to police reforms.
We're
And
deviating,
continues.
Mr. Perard. That's public comment discussion, not this specific case. So,
Well, then let me ask you this. Why has our Department of Justice, DA,
Mr.
FBI...
Perard, thank you for your time this evening. You're done.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that you all
You're done.
suffer
Thank
from
you.
educational deficiency.
Thank you, sir.
which is lack of respect for the
Thank you,
people
sir.
and the law.
Okay. Moving on, serious use of force, officer-involved shooting cases. There are none listed?
Katrina?
Yes, I'm sorry, Katrina. We are, well,
We have to do that one.
We have to do a vote. So I make a motion that we don't grant the appeal that we received for case 212-18 did not meet the criteria for an appeal. There are often cases, this is one of them, in which people appeal because they don't like the result. That isn't a reason to grant an appeal. There are specific reasons, those things are on our website, and if people want to look them up, they're welcome to do so. But we did not see anything in the appeal for case 212-18 that met the criteria for appeal, so we recommend denying.
And I'll second the motion and just clarify for the rest of the board that 212 is a completely different case than this one.
then 244.
Yeah, but nevertheless, we could not find any satisfaction of any of the appeal criteria when we reviewed it in policy and procedures, in case review. So I second the motion on 212.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. No serious use of force, officer-involved shootings. Nothing under the review of Garrity material that we need to approve. I don't know of anything meeting with council. Do we have any other business?
I make a motion that we adjourn. When's our next meeting?
Our next meeting is June 13th at 5 PM here.
Can I get a second?
I second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh. Thank you, guys.